All right, so I'm going to talk to you guys about like how to build events into key events, basically. I remember when I was standing with Brian Carter, I think at Canton Trade Days, and he was like, we got all these really great events, and I'm trying to figure out like how to actually make them better. And I was like, well, what would you call those events? And I think that was the day that Brian coined the phrase key events. And we were like, oh. He's like, they're like our key events. I was like, that's a great term. We should start telling people that. And we did, and it worked. So, yeah, thank you, Brian. And, many thanks to you for so many things. It's pretty cool. But to prep this message, I actually reached out to a lot of top coordinators around the country. So first, this is a message that's actually crafted by the best of the best. And second, I want to thank Leah Eliopoulos. I want to thank Mike Tortora, Matt Foss, Burt Wicks, and of course, 10 years running as the #1 coordinator in the company, Mr. Brian Carter back there, crushing it. So I'm just going to run through this stuff and take pictures of the slides. I'm going to leave them up there with all the information on them because I got a lot to cover in just 30 minutes, and I want to make sure that I get through it all for you guys. So first thing that you got to do with key events, it really starts with, it's really these 7 steps, right? Messaging expectations, we're going to talk about that, all these things. Targeting which events you're going to make key events. Your booth display and your booth locations. Staffing comes down to marketing, comes down to communication with multiple different types of people within your program, and it comes down to training and skill development. So I'm sure I'm going to miss some things in here. So again, I'm going to have a roundtable tomorrow as well. Feel free to come talk to me about it or grab me tonight or anything like that. Also, you could grab any of the top people in this room because how many of you as coordinators are already managing a robust key event program in your opinion? Raise your hand. So look around the room really quick. Keep your hands up, guys. These are the people who feel very confident in their key event programs. So make sure you talk to them about it as well because I'm not the only one. Like Dante said, there's more than one right answer here. So let's first talk about messaging and expectations. So here's the thing, guys. If the team is not on board with an event being a key event or becoming a key event or having the opportunity to become a key event, then it's dead in the water. So it starts with how your team views it. The team has to believe it's a key event, even if it's not yet a key event. And expectations have to be set for that. So one of the things we like to tell our team is that key events don't exist, right? It's not like we found this one show and we have a cash register and people just show up and buy Cutco. It's the most glorious thing in the world, right? We have built shows to that point, but it's just that concept that key events are built. They don't just happen. Which means that we need to be prepared as coordinators and we need to make sure our teams are prepared to invest ourselves over years to develop clients, serve clients, communicate with and market to clients, and get them coming back to the event. Look at any great key event in the company, and it's got a very strong and robust past customer business to it, right? It's got a number of past customers that come and shop at that event. So right now, I flew down here from Cleveland because I'm a guest up at the Great Big Home and Garden Show in Cleveland, right? And the first year I worked at, not a key event for me, key event for the company. They were doing over 250 grand. This year, we're on pace to do over between 350 and 400 in 10 days, biggest home and garden show in the company. And it is becoming a key event for me. So last year, the first 3 days, I sold 7 grand. This year, the first 3 days, I sold 14,000. And so big difference, doubled my sales, and most of that increase has come from year 3 now. This is my 4th year. Year 4, I'm starting to get traction with my past customers, right? So all of these things take investment of both time and dollars. Think about that, right? Your team has to be told these things. Otherwise, they don't get it. You have to teach them how to think about this. But we've shown that it pays off over and over and over again, investing that time, investing those dollars year after year after year. And when you can get your top people tied into the concept of hey, this could be your next big key event, right? Right now it's doing 5 grand. You got it to 10 grand because we put a badass in there and somebody who knows how to crush. You showed up and did what nobody else has ever done at this event. Now imagine if you do this for the next 3 to 5 years, what could that look like for you once you have a couple hundred customers at this, that come to this event to see you? The king of key events in here probably is Curtis. How many key events do you have, Curtis, every year? 7 or 8. And that's coming from the guy who is the master of big events and big sales. So what do you consider a key event for you, Curtis? How much do you have to sell there for you to be this is a key event for me? Yeah, so Curtis's qualification of a key event is his own personal sales. I will repeat that because he said it very quietly and modestly in his own Curtis way, right? Is $80,000 to $100,000 or more. I mean, that's incredible. Like, think about how big he's thinking right now, guys. That is huge. So how big is your team thinking about key events? Are you teaching them how to think that way? I guarantee you, as a coordinator, Curtis is teaching his team, hey, you need to be thinking like this. You need to be thinking about, what is this going to look like 5 or 10 years from now? How do I get this event to 50K, 80K, 100K in sales over the course of the years by developing this event for yourself? So if your team's not bought in, they'll never get there. You also need it to be something where it's actually an earned privilege, right? And really, when it comes to like messaging for the team, expectations for the team, it should be one of those things where we put our best people at our best events. So your team should know they need to become one of the best people to be able to have the opportunity to work the best events. They should also expect that, like, hey, over the years, we're going to develop this, and if it is one of the best events that we do in the division, it's got the traffic flow, it's got the clientele, it's never, like, a key event's never really an event one person can handle on their own, because maybe there are times in the day where it's slow, but it's during the busy times of the day where you can only handle so many customers at one time, and people want to stop, but maybe they don't because they see that you're busy. Or maybe they do, and they only wait for so long, then they get impatient and take off, right? They never stop. And so if you're always the person who's always busy at that event, and there's people who want to buy Cutco, but they can't because you're just always busy all the time, well, then that means that, hey, we're going to need to have a larger booth. We're going to need to have more awesome people at this event. And so they should expect that the more we make this event successful, the larger the booths are going to get, the more booths we're going to have, the more high-performing people we're going to help earn the privilege to actually work and develop the event with us, because we want to take it to the next level. You also have to have, it's your responsibility really to have a vision for where the event could get to when it's at max potential. So we'll talk about how to create that, but remember, your biggest opportunity for impacting is through your influence and your ability to actually garner trust, garner confidence, and support from your team. And that starts by having a confident and compelling vision for what's possible, and to use data and great policy to back that up. So, I remember when Brian sat down and, we do monthly calls, like strategic planning calls, he and I, because he's managing a $5 million program, guys. It's a huge deal. How many team managers do you have, Brian, in your manager tier right now? Is it 8? Yeah, I think it's 8 people. And then how many people do you have in your leadership group?
Leadership group, like 13.
In addition to the 8, yeah. So I mean, it's a big team. It's a big project for him to be managing. So he has to really focus his time. But I remember when he sat down for the first time, he's like, okay, I'm going to sell the key events to the team. Like, these are going to be our key events. We're going to protect these for the best people. We're going to build these events. We're going to make them our best events. And it was all based on just the data that he had on what those events were. Like, here's how they've grown over the years. Here's the ones that have slipped. And we can literally see when we put new people at this event, the sales go down significantly. When we put good people at this event, the sales go up significantly. So it just makes sense for us to make these our key events and really focus on developing these events, because they're in our best markets. They have the best clientele. They have the best traffic and all that. Let's talk about targeting which events to go to. So, once you've got your messaging down and you've got a vision that you're putting out to your team, it's time to sit down and target what events you want to make your key events. So with Brian, for example, I remember, and I'm going to use him as an example because he's really the first person to really build this out, and he's also running, I think, one of the most robust programs in the business. So I'm going to use him as an example quite a bit. I've also worked very close with him for almost 20 years now, so I understand quite a bit about what he's doing to be successful, and how I'm involved in that because I'm part of that team as well. So, but targeting, you have to target the events, like which ones are going to be the key events. If you don't know yet, because maybe you don't have a good understanding of your events, or you think that there's an event that could potentially be an event, like a great event. How many of you have ever been in that situation where you're like, oh man, we've been trying to get into this event for years, and like, I guarantee this is going to be a 100K event. Anybody ever been like, yeah, this is going to be the next big event on the books? Raise your hand if you're guilty of this. And how many of you had that experience and like you got in the event and then it was just trash? Yeah, right, exactly. I know I did that a lot, right, back in the beginning. Before we were ever doing 10K at an event, I was like, we're going to do 10K at this event, and then we'd sell 1,000. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. So I got to quit selling these events and overhyping them because I was creating bad expectations. So, but you can go scout an event, right, work an event yourself. Pay attention to the event, what it's doing, not just to the results. Those do take time to build. So the first couple years, an event may seem it could be a key event, but if you can't create stability at that event over time, maybe it's not a key event, right? You have to give it some time. But here's the non-results things that you can look at, right? Pay attention to the traffic and the engagement of clients at the event. Can you see the future potential walking around, right? Does the event have the quality of client? You know the quality of the client based on the average order at the event. So you can look at Eventalytics if you've been working it for years, right? And if the average order is pretty sound, then it could be a key event. Also pay attention to the traffic of the event, like how busy is the event? You can tell that by the number of orders per day. One of the ways that I've found to uncover key events that maybe aren't key events yet, but could be, is when I see a high number of orders per day per person working, but I see a low average order. And I know that person is great at what they do. Like they're one of the best in the business, but for some reason they have a low average order. And that to me is always a sign that they're too busy, right? So what are they doing? They're clipping through customers quickly. They're not spending time. They're not showing packages and programs. They're not upserving. They're not doing the famous let go. They're not getting a lot of past customer traffic because the conversations are very transactional, not very relational, right? And when you see that data prove out over the course of multiple, experiences with that same event, well, like, okay, maybe we need to add another person to that event. Maybe we need to expand that booth, get a little bit larger to ease the pressure on the people during the busy times. And we've done that many times, and we've seen maybe order count goes down per person a little bit for a year or two, but eventually they're great, they're champions, right? They get right back up to their order count because they don't want to miss their goals, they want to hit their goals. But what I've seen time and time again is order count might go down a little bit, but average order goes up significantly, and overall sales increase significantly, right? What would you rather have? Would you rather have 10 $500 orders, or would you rather have 15 $200 orders? It's just simple math, right? I would rather have 3 people get 10 $500 orders than have 2 people get 15 $200 or $300 orders, right? Everyone wins in that situation. Now, it's not perfect. Sometimes you have to try it out. Sometimes you have to push the boundaries. You'll never know where the boundaries are if you don't ever push them. So does the event have the quality of client, average order? Does it have the traffic, which is number of orders per day? And is it long enough, right? So typically key events, when you look at them company-wide, they're about 3 days or more, right? 3 to 10 day plus events, those are, more often than not the key events. If you're doing an event for 7 to 10 days and you're averaging $1,000 a day at it, you either have the wrong person at it or you're at the wrong event. Those people should be out doing service calls, right? Not sitting at the booth for 12 hours a day waiting, hoping that somebody shows up so they can sell that $1,000 that the event's been averaging. And anybody that's like working a long event like that, they deserve to be at higher performing events. So third thing I want to talk about, booth displays, right? So booth locations, booth displays. I'm going to start on the actual displays themselves. It's interesting to me, I've seen a lot of pictures of people's key event displays. And I think there's a lot of really awesome displays out there. I think there's a lot of events that are underperforming simply because their booths look kind of trashy. Mismatched tablecloths, they've got, the vinyl banner up from 10 years ago. They've got a lot of things going on, it's like still random knives just laid out on the table with nothing like propping them up and covering them and making them look classy and stuff like that. So guys, you got to remember, right? We are a luxury product. We are a luxury company. Our booth displays need to scream luxury, right? They need to scream high class. Thank you to Joseph Rodriguez and Bullish Branding. He has really brought the class of our displays up significantly over the last few years since COVID, right? Now, it's unfortunate that he did black and Jim Stitt saw it and was like, nope, blue. But, over the next few years, we'll make that transition. I think the blue ones actually look pretty good, right? So I like the black because we get dirty sometimes at our events, right? It's just they don't show the dirt as well. But, hey, the blue's going to get dirtier. We're just going to have to clean it more. No big deal, right? But the idea here is that you want to have a luxury-looking booth. The look should represent that. You want to keep the display clean, right? I know Leah is like she's basically a general when it comes to the display, right? Throw your trash in the trash, not under your board, not on the floor, not on the back table, right? Don't have your drink cup from 4 days ago sitting there still and it's empty and never been refilled and getting crusty. You just want to like hold your team to a high standard of how things look, simply put, right? Stop throwing the little pieces of leather on the table, you know? Like just drop it in the trash can. If you don't have a trash can, you're like, what's a trash can, Josh? I don't have room in my car for a trash can. Are you kidding me? It's already packed to the hilt. I Tetris my whole car together, right? Mike Tortora introduced me to this really cool camping trash can. It literally folds down flat. And then it like zips up and ties itself together. And then when you pop it out, it pops up to a trash can that's like this big around and like this tall. Right? And I mean, it's like an accordion. It's amazing, right? I mean, I can fit like 10 days of trash in that thing. So Bert likes to empty it every night because he's classy. I like to let it ride for 10 days because I don't cut food, but, you know, so, but anyways, it's like, just keep it clean, right? That's the whole idea. So have a uniform look as well. So when you're at an event with multiple booth displays, consider getting all of your booth displays upgraded to the same display. So Brian did this many years ago. It's funny, we go back and we look at like the State Fair of Texas displays from, you know, just even like what, 6 or 7 years ago. And it's like night and day difference. And guys, every single year that we've convinced our team to make a significant investment in their booth displays, it's insane. Like we literally see the needles jump. Like you can see the results stair step up. We're actually asking ourselves every year now, what can we do to take the displays to the next level? And we're having a hard time figuring it out because we've done so much. But like when we went from banners to backdrops, game changer. When we went from, you know, tablecloth displays that were not matching to matching tablecloth displays, game changer. When we went from, you know, at our big events, like our state fairs, what we call our crown events, when we went from the tablecloth displays to the deluxe displays, which we spent $22,000 on in 1 year. We had to go to our DVM, we had to have them front us the money, and then we bought them, had them built, bought them, all that sort of stuff, and then we paid them back on chargebacks. Like literally the team paid for it in the state fair charges that year. We just folded it in and told everybody what was going on. But, you know, and everybody's like, let's do it. And thank God we did because, bam, things just jumped through the roof. It's funny how the promoters even come to you and they're like, man, you guys have really changed something, haven't you? And we're like, yeah, it's these big, beautiful displays that we bought and invested in and had built. And they're like, right, you had those janky-looking tablecloths before. And we were like, well, they're not janky. But, you know, they were tablecloths. Yes, you're right about that. So, but, you know, have that uniform look. It's worth it, right? Making the investment is worth it. We've literally never invested. There was 1 year where Brian bought a bunch of the pull-up backdrop or the pull-up banner stands and then a bunch of backdrops for the team. And how much did you spend, Brian? Was it like $13,000 that year? Yeah, so 8,001 right here at the NET meeting, signed the check over, and then $6,000 a couple months later, $14,000 just on backdrops and banner stands, and everybody loved them, and they started setting them up, and then bam, we started selling more, just like that. It's amazing how big of a deal that can make. So, and then also have your team invest in packages and programs. Brian loves to tell the story about how he rode Matt Foss one day about not having steak knives in his sets, and basically forced him to go to his car and get trimmers out of his car and put steak knives in it. And Matt was like grumbling about it, you know, like, is it really that big a deal? And then sure enough, that same day, you know, and that weekend, Matt sold a bunch of sets with steak knives and was like, I'm putting all steak knives in all my sets, right? So sometimes as a coordinator, what you have to do is you have to ride your team and put the pressure on them to level up. Right, that's the point. Every single TGP person has if you're on the leadership team in TGP, you have a legacy cookware set. Now, we gave people like a 2-year runway to get there, but we started training on cookware. We've been hammering cookware for years. We started bringing the best of the best in to source the best practices. We did all these things, and we told people, hey, start investing now, because if you don't, there will come a day where you won't be on the team. You won't have access to these events anymore because you don't have the right display for these events. And so guess what? Everybody gets legacy cookware displays. There was a year we told everybody, all right, no more trashy flatware chests that have been on the road with you for 10 years that have 6 place settings in them or 3.5 place settings in them. You have to have a full flatware chest. If you're going to work these events, you have to have a full 60-piece flatware chest. And guess what? You have to keep your flatware chest looking halfway decent, right? And if it starts looking really bad where customers are actually commenting on it when one of your booth mates are trying to demo it and then they don't buy it because of the comments they're making about how it looks, well, you're going to have to replace that flatware chest too. So you have to hold your team to high standards. Booth locations, let's talk about that. Goal number 1, get the best location you can at the event. Sometimes we get the last location when we first get into an event, right? And a lot of times people just settle and they just kind of re-sign that same location over and over again. First year I'm at an event, I am walking around that event, I am looking, where is the traffic flow? Where are the best people hanging out the most? Where are the highest quality products? Where would be the best place for us to have a booth? And then in my relationship building conversations, my meetings with promoters at the key events and our crown events, I'm always talking about the ideal opportunity for us, what we'd love to work towards as a team, right? Goal number 2, get the sales up and get 2 top performers succeeding at a high level, right? Goal number 3, get the size right for the booth. So a 10 by 20. Guys, it's amazing. Like when I went from 10 by 10 booths to 10 by 20 booths, it is so hard for me now to work in a 10 by 10 booth because I like the space of a 10 by 20, just being able to spread out. Here's the other thing most people don't think, right? And you're at a 10 by 10 inline, how much frontage do you have? 10 feet, right? When you go to a 10 by 20, you just doubled your frontage. And that's basically like me saying, hey man, how you doing? Are you familiar with Cutco? And he's walking by me. I'm like, oh, cool, you have it? How long have you had it? Cool, how do you like it? Boom, hey, do you have this new knife yet? And then, I've got 20 feet to engage with that customer versus just 10. How many times have you asked 1 or 2 questions and they're already gone at a 10-foot booth, right? At least at a 10 by 20, you can get 4 or 5 questions out before they're at the other corner of the booth. Now, make that a 10 by 10 corner. You just added for only what most shows charge you an extra $100. Maybe the best events charge a $200 or $300 premium for a corner on top of the thousands they're already charging you. So you're putting a small extra bet on the table, a side bet, and you just bought yourself another 10 feet of space. So for an inline, it's double the space for only a little bit more. For a 10 by 20 corner, it ends up increasing your frontage by 50%. And if you get a 10 by 20 end cap, the 3-sided booth, right, where you have the 2 corners next to each other, that right there, now you have 40 feet of space to engage customers. Dante, how big at our peak year was the #1 booth at the San Antonio Home and Garden Show?
We got to a 10 by 40.
10 by 40, guys, because it was an inline. And we were like, there were no corners available at the large scale, so we were like, all right, give us a 10 by 40. We'll spend the extra $3,000 they charge for a 10 by 10 booth or whatever there, and we will make it our own 10 by 30 end cap. So we made it a 3-sided 10 by 30 booth. So we had 30 feet of frontage in the front, and then we had 2 5-foot gaps, right, where on the sides we made the wings, so we had our own end cap in an inline that was 10 by 40. And we sold, what, $85,000 that year, right, our best year ever that year. So guys, it's always worth it. I can't think of a single time it wasn't worth the extra upcharge that we paid to have the corner or the extra double corner. So then you want to stabilize the booth. This is a step a lot of people skip, right? In the progression of building the key event through multiple booths is a lot of times people get gung-ho. They're like really excited, like, hey, yeah, we crushed it. And then they add a second booth, and they add a third booth the next year, and they add a fourth booth the next year. And now you got 10 people working. And all of a sudden, everybody's like, wait a minute, I'm selling a lot less, right? We've seen it happen at some of the best events nationwide. I won't name names. Y'all know who you are, right? So why does it happen, right? It's because we never stabilized the first booth, right? Or we added maybe booth 1 was stable because it'd been there for 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years, right? But we added booth 2, and booth 2 crushed it that first year because it was new and it was fresh, and we had some people that were very excited to be there. And then we added booth 3 the next year, right? And that was a mistake because all of a sudden sales slipped. And so it's because we didn't stabilize booth 2. You have to give people time to build their customer base at that second location, right? And then once it's stable, then you can add that third booth, right? Once people know, like, okay, I know this event, I know the kind of the flow of it, I know the energy of it, I feel good, I can make this event work for me. That's when then you go, okay, cool, now let's go ahead and add the next booth, right? Because then they also have past customer traffic, they're investing in the marketing, it's actually paying off, all that sort of stuff. Let's talk about staffing. Best people at the best events. People need to be committed. They need to be invested in the idea of building the event into its potential. So the best people at the best events make sense, yes, but, and this is the big B-U-T, but, it cannot be an entitlement program. It has to be an earned privilege, right? It has to be earned. How do they earn it? It's very simple, guys, very simple. You're developing your skills. You're getting your averages are moving in the right direction. You're making the marketing investment. You're providing service to your customers, which is turning into loyal clients that talk well about you, that come to the booth and have positive things to say about working with you. You're engaged in other aspects of the program and the team. Like you show up to the meetings, for example. You're consistently working events, not just camping out on the best events. You're contributing to the division. You're speaking at team meetings maybe, or you're field training people, or you're coming to the SC conferences. You're doing something where you're seen and you're known in the division as a positive influence and someone who impacts this division in a positive way. It doesn't have to be a ton. It just needs to be seen, and it just needs to be valued by the division. Because that gives the coordinators the ability, when people are sitting there going, oh, why does Calvin get to work that event, but I don't get to work that event? And your coordinator can go, well, because Calvin, provides a lot for this division. Calvin worked 30 events last year. Calvin has been doing on this events team for 10 years. Calvin was actually in your position at one point. He has worked his way up to where he is today, and you have that same opportunity too. You need to have that type of an answer. Otherwise, you're just like, yeah, because Calvin's Calvin, and we like Calvin, and our DVM said Calvin can. And then they go, well, that's weird and doesn't make much sense to me. Right? Like Dante was talking about, you need to have that vision where they can see the progression over the 3 to 5 years of how they can build themselves up through the tiers to that next level. Key events is like that huge carrot out there that you can dangle in front of your team and get them committed to being around for a long time. As the team builds, also be prepared to explore options to protect the ability to staff the best people at the best events through things like invitation-only strategies. So I saw Brian do this, and I was like, oh, this is genius, right? So it's like he has certain events that are invite-only events. The crown events, so there's like, there's basically the marketplace events, there's the traditional events, there's the key events, and then he's coined the term like crown events. Actually, I think I might have coined that one, actually, because I couldn't come up with a better thing, right? So we were like, what do we call these ones? I'm like, they're the top, they're the king events. Let's call them crowns. So anyways, and so it's funny because those events now, we have like a bucket of events in TGP every year that are crown events that are invitation-only events. And then we have a whole policy on what it takes to earn the privilege to be invited to work those events. Guess what it starts with? How are you performing at the key events? Right? That dictates a lot of it. So as the team builds, be prepared to continue to build the structure of your program and have multiple layers of types of events, types of staff performing consistently at all levels. And there are a number of high-performing events and many events happening each week on a regular basis. So you end up in a position where you're like, hey, there's plenty of opportunities for you to work. We don't just have these big, awesome events that everybody wants to work. We have lots of other events. Go out, cut your teeth on that, prove what you can do out there, and then we can get you involved, right? So require your people to perform at a high level. Put them in the position where they're basically like, the only way they get the opportunity to do it is if they're performing at that high level. And by the way, guys, this includes you. So this includes you as a coordinator. Are you leading from the front? Or are you camping out on the best shifts because of your position or your title? You got to ask that question. You got to be honest with yourself. You don't have to be the best on the team, but you got to be just as invested as any other top performer. And you got to be running with the best on the team too. So, I watched Brian go through this evolution. How did Brian become a rep that sells $400,000 in a year more every single year now, while also being a high-performing district manager, an assistant division manager, and managing a $5 million program as a coordinator, and also a father of 2 and a husband of a wonderful wife? How does he do it? How do you get to the 400K level? Well, everybody else on his team started rising up. And they started rising up quick. And Brian was like, I cannot be the guy that's selling $100,000 and picking all the shifts at this event because I'm the coordinator. So I saw him hunker down. Like Brian used to come to the booth every single day, and he'd have his headset in back before AirPods were a thing, right? Wire down, all that stuff. And for like 2 hours, he'd been listening to Curtis's new customer approach on repeat over and over and over again. And he would keep it on until his first turn. Literally, the first turn he got, that thing would pop right back. It'd pop out. He'd put it on the table, and then off to the races. And you know what? Go figure. He was selling sets like Curtis was, just like that. Challenged me as a top rep on his team to do the same thing. I got to work on my skills. If Brian's working on his skills and seeing results, I got to work on my skills too, right? Coordinators lead from the front. Great coordinators lead from the front. So what are you doing to do that, right? I've seen Dante Reynolds do the same thing. When Dante came in as a coordinator, arguably, he was the worst person for the job in terms of CPO. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, his averages sucked. The guy couldn't close a deal on a service call for the life of him. I mean, he was bad. So, but he was hungry, he was young, he was excited, and Stacy knew for the long term he was the right pick. And then Dante had a reality check real quick when all the top CSPs started sniping at him, like, hey, dude, you're taking these shifts, like, and you're selling $1,000 a day when we're selling 4 or 5, like, what's going on? And very quickly, he became a student of the business. He got a mentor. He started coming to all the conferences. He started role-playing his scripts. He started calling people all over the nation. He started, he went to the Iowa State Fair, the Minnesota State. He did everything he needed to do to get himself up. And now he's actually got some of the highest averages on the team consistently year in and year out. So, and don't be afraid of like having 3 or 4 or 5 people at the booth. I worked on Saturday and had 4 people at the booth all day on Saturday. Aaron Swintek was right there next to me, right, at the Great Big Home and Garden Show. We literally had 12 people at the home show selling all day long. Were there times where all of us were not busy? Absolutely, 100%. But that happens at every show. We don't care about the times that it's not busy. We care about the times that it is busy. Those are the times that count. Even if it's only an hour or 2 that day, that hour or 2 that day could be the money-making hour or 2 that day. Take advantage. Put your team in the position to take advantage, but you have to believe in that too. The whole goal is collaboration over competition. All right, a couple more things here. Communication. Communication with clients has to be there. Teach past customers to come by, say hi, share testimonials, encourage others there to purchase, send referrals. You want to have a robust culture of support between reps. Guys, we have people come from all over the country to cross-train at the State Fair of Texas, and the number one comment that we get at the end of the day is, holy crap, I have never seen so many customers that go to all 5 booths in a day and tell everybody they have Cutco, they love Cutco, they work with Chelsea, or they work with Brian, or they work with Calvin, or they work with Curtis, or they work with whoever, right? Name the name. Take the name out, drop another name in. It happens over and over and over again. And it's because we have taught our clients it's okay to come to the show. It's okay to go to the Cutco booth. It's okay to tell people that you have Cutco. It's okay to buy from other people. My colleagues will take care of me and to take care of you. Make sure you get a world-class experience and make sure I'm taken care of. Because we reward you for your loyalty. We'd rather you come talk to us and talk to anybody than only come talk to me, because I'm only at a handful of shows every year. So you got to communicate with them. You got to communicate with your promoters. How do you make your promoters feel? Dedicate time and attention to promoter relationships. Make sure they feel seen, appreciated, loved by you and your team. Stand out to them. Have fun with them. Get them invested in you, your team, your success. Last night, Mike Tortoro was dropping me off after the show, and he's like, dude, I took, Lee baked cookies. I saved like a dozen cookies and took them over to the ticket ladies that like manage our ticket list for us at the Will Call booth, and you should have seen how much they lit up. It was amazing. Right? Be a beacon of positivity in the depths of negativity that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. Trust me, it will open doors you've never seen before. Bert knows. He was telling me some stories recently. And also, communicate with your team members. How do they work with you and how do they work with others? If they're not being good, tell them that. Be open, be honest, be direct. Just manage people, right? Make sure they understand your vision for the future. Communicate with your team and make sure that you leave like Brian's really going to handle this in his message next, but so I'm not going to get into it, but your team needs to know that you've got their backs, but they also need to know that they can't get away with stuff. And the last thing when it comes to training and skill development, take a picture of that slide because I don't have time to really go through it. But you want your team to be developing their skills. So leverage the benefits of access to key events to raise the tide. Use your key events as a carrot and require your people to get better. They should be getting better at selling packages, at their number of orders per day, their business gift focus, how many sets they're selling, and really good at the drop-down process. So Bert Wicks gets just as many one-piece orders as he does homemaker orders. And then what's crazy is every single day I worked side by side with Bert last year, I'm pretty sure he closed at least one business gift order too. Because as a coordinator, his goal is to be the best on his team, and he is the best on his team because he's working on all these skill sets. You work on all these skill sets, your event, like people will never be mad if you had another person next to them at the booth because they're like, yeah, I'm crushing it. I'm busy all day. Bring somebody else in. I'd love to crush it with somebody else. This would be awesome, right? And then you can come talk to us about some of this other stuff like extra pep calls in our meetings. A lot of teams do that. And get up-and-comers in the room to hear and learn at those meetings and on those calls. Schedule those calls far in advance so you minimize resistance from your veterans. Want your veterans to be engaged? Give them the schedule 18 months early. 12 months early. I literally was sending texts today to our coordinators for TGP about, hey guys, here's state fair dates for 2026, 2027, 2028. Because the fairs gave them to me, you might as well have them, put them in your schedules now. Plan on being there. And then always be looking for bottlenecks in skill development and use the facts to do that. Event analytics, your stats tracking forms, all that kind of stuff. It's amazing what you can get people to improve when you're actually paying attention to the data and seeing what the trends are with your team. Where are they doing well? Where are they struggling as an organization? And then cater your agendas and your training. When you have consistent meetings and calls, you can actually teach people on things consistently all year long. And we do that. It's amazing. People show up for the TGP State Fair program to 4 two-hour-long calls and a 2-day meeting that they're required to be at in person, no questions asked. Can't skip it. Right? And it's like, how do we do that? People ask all the time, how do you get people to do that? In addition to your monthly team meetings and all the other things and the conferences they have to come to, all this stuff. I'm like, well, we just tell them, if you don't come, we give away your shifts. It's pretty simple. It's amazing what people will show up and do when you threaten to take away their money-making opportunity to them. Now, don't threaten them, obviously. I'm nice about it. But we just don't make exceptions, plain and simple. So, guys, it's a process. Takes years, takes leadership. It's always worth it. So get out there, have fun, come ask me questions. I'm happy to help out anytime you need.